Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and today I'd like to talk about toxic parenting, and rather, I'd like to use the word dangerous parenting. Parenting that may not necessarily be consciously and deliberately be toxic, but on a very subconscious, unconscious level, it may be very dangerous. It may be, and it can, and many a times it does in the longer run for those being raised in such parenting, through such parenting, can prove to be very dysfunctional, can prove to be very unhealthy, and both on physical levels, as well as psychological levels. So, parenting that seeks out an easy way or an easy approach to parenting, wherein a child or a little individual is punished as a way to discipline them, be it through physical abuse, be it through verbal abuse, both of which is detrimental for that growing up individual, for that little individual, both on psychological and physical levels, may actually be teaching and training that little individual to grow up into a certain kind of a person, to grow up into a certain kind of an adult. On the other hand, the free pass parenting, wherein the parents essentially are people pleasers and have difficulty establishing boundaries, negotiating boundaries with their own children, with the little people around them, wherein the parent has difficulty being gentle and being firm both at the same time, can and will, not only in the short term but also in the longer term, will lead to consequences that are unhealthy and dysfunctional, not only for the individual on a personal level but even on an interpersonal level. And I personally call both of those mechanisms, both of those strategies, as easy way out parenting, wherein the idea is not to connect, is not to get attuned to that little individual, but the idea is to find shortcuts to do the job of the parent or the parenting job. The other dangerous kind of parenting is parents who constantly compare their kids with each other, not just with their siblings, but even with the kids' friends. And a constant comparison in the longer run trains this little person to keep comparing itself with everything outside of itself, which in a way, in my understanding, not only disables the child or that little person the ability to gradually self-reflect, to gain more insight, to do the inner work, but it also probably makes the child, that little person, a little less confident about its own self. It might create self-esteem, self-worth issues much later as the child grows up, as this person grows up. Or on the other hand, if the parent is constantly comparing and yet praising the child constantly, or rather overpraising the child constantly, this little person constantly, it may make the child believe that it's special and not unique. And thereby, it may lead to the growth of an individual that comes across as being a little too entitled, a little too overbearing. Parenting can also turn dangerous when the parents start to manipulate their kids in order to have their own way around, which essentially means that the child is not heard, seen, or even understood for what that little person is all about, for what that little person brings to the table. And in a way, in my understanding, it is these parents who, in some ways, are trying to live their unfulfilled desires through their kids, their unfulfilled aspirations and life choices through their own kids. It is these parents who cannot see their kids as a separate entity having their own individuality from themselves, but rather for them, consciously or unconsciously, the kid, the child, or this little person is just an extension, is just a means through which they get to experience a different kind of a life which they probably never got to have, or never made the choice to have. Another dangerous kind of parenting is neglectful parenting, wherein the parent is not connected and attuned with the child, wherein the parent may not consider the child an important enough person, an important enough individual to pay due attention towards it, which in some way will branch out in some form or the other, either as hyper independence, either as being too clingy or too needy, either as unhealthy narcissism, or either as unhealthy people pleasing. For it is through this kind of parenting that the child learns, that the little person learns, that that individual learns that it's not a priority, that it's not a priority in the life of people that gave birth to it. Another dangerous kind of parenting is when the parent deliberately tells the child, tells that little growing up individual, that it is not a priority in their scheme of things. Another dangerous kind of parenting, which may come from parents' own unresolved issues, is being over controlling, over dominating, or being too passive and too pampering. Now, both of these extreme modalities branch out as unhealthy, dysfunctional mechanisms in that individual's personal and interpersonal relationships. And most times than not, it starts to show up after 15, 20, 25 years. Another dangerous kind of parenting is when a parent, without their own deliberate awareness, is trying to say something but is enacting something else through their behavior, implicitly is giving the message to the child that the parent, that the grown up, can't be trusted. Because inherently, children or little people learn through observation and absorption rather than through listening many a times. So when they see a disconnect in the parent's actions and words, in the parent's actions and behaviors, they not only observe and absorb that, they not only replicate it in their lives, but they also stop trusting that individual, that grown up. And they not only do that, but they also start to distrust their own selves. For if their words and their behaviors, or their words and actions, are misaligned, quite naturally, that's a difficult person to trust. Another dangerous kind of parenting is when most of the times the kids are receiving, the little people are receiving the message that it's my way or the highway. Now, since kids observe and absorb, they either repeat that as they grow up, as they become adults, or they swing exactly in the opposite direction, which may be nobody's way, and having no way or no sense of direction can actually lead to a lot of chaos. And if those are the ways for most days of our life, quite naturally it causes a lot of unnecessary, undue stress. And physiologically, it can show up as n number of stress-related diseases. Another dangerous kind of parenting, which may actually be happening on a very subconscious level, on a very non-conscious level, is hasty and impatient parenting, wherein most things are not thought through in life. Another kind of parenting that doesn't really help the child is seeing a parent as witnessing a parent who comes across as a helpless grown-up. And of course, over here, I'm not talking about parents who've become parents as teenagers. So when this little person, when this child moving towards adulthood at some point in time or the other, witnesses and experiences its own parents' helplessness, it observes and it absorbs. It then either repeats the same thing in its own lifetime, at least for a long while, or it would then again swing to the other extreme, wherein it would become so hyper independent that to ask for any kind of a help would come across as an act of weakness for this person, for this individual. And in a way, if most of the times we are walled up, we have the psychological wall created around us, wherein there's lack of openness and vulnerability, there's also lack of connection. There's also lack of belonging. And over the past few years, through different podcasts, through different books, another kind of parenting that's equally dangerous, and of course operating not from the conscious level, but operating out of subconscious and unconscious levels, is when parents try to tell the kids that they are with each other, tolerating each other as parents, living with each other as parents, just for their sake. Quite unfortunately, without realizing, the child feels the burden of keeping the parents' marriage intact. The child, knowingly or unknowingly, may take the responsibility to keep afloat the parents' relationship with each other. And in a way, knowingly or unknowingly, that's a huge burden for a child to bear. In a way, it's also teaching the child that that is how couples' relationship work. On the other hand, when a child grows up in an environment that's always conflicted, or that experiences conflict more than 90-95% of the times, that experiences disconnect within the parental relationship most of the times, it presents an unhealthy dynamic of a relationship, of an interpersonal close relationship, to that little brain who's observing and absorbing everything around it, said or unsaid, that's happening around it. And some of the examples of toxic parenting or dangerous parenting that I can think about that has been shown in our movies are Tare Zameen Par, Dangal to a certain degree, Shakuntala Devi, Rocky and Rani Ki Prem Kahani, Three Idiots, PK, Dil Dhadakne Do, Animal, just to name a few. And to some degree, I'll accept that at some points in my life, that at some points in the journey of being a parent or playing the role of a parent, doing the job of a parent, to a degree, even I had been in some of those places and spaces. To a degree, and for a while, even I had become neglectful. To a degree, and for a while, even I had become over controlling and overbearing, over dominating. To a degree, even I had slipped onto easy way parenting modalities, shortcut parenting modalities, till I became aware and till I realized that most shortcuts don't work in the journey of life. That most shortcuts through these modalities not only create disconnected relationships, not only between the child and the parent, but even on intrapersonal levels, even on a self-personal level, but many a times create insecure relationships, even in the longer run as we grow up. So then let's ask ourselves, if we have slipped into those parenting modalities at some point in time or the other in our lifetime, have we done any of those things that we wish were not done to us, were not done towards us? And are we or our kids are carrying on the repercussions of our parenting? Let's try and reflect on all of those aspects so that we become a little aware of what made us the kind of people that we are today, and what are the seeds that we have sown through our own parenting journey in the generation that we have birthed and created. Let's try and do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.